Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatan Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saritam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitamscha Om Ajnanatirmirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Mano Bhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadha Mahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Janmadhyasya Yaton Vayaditarata Sharate Shrabhigya Swarat Tene Brahma Hridhaya Rati Kavaye Muhyanti Yasuraya Tejo Varim Mridam Yata Vinimayo Yatra Trisargo Mrisha Dhamna Svena Sadhana Rasta Kuhakam Satyam Param Dhimahi Hari Om Tat Sat. So Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is giving different meanings to the Atmarama verse. Atmarama Shtamunayo Nigranta Api Urukrame Kurvanti Ahitukem Bhaktim Itam Bhutaguna Hari. So the Atmaramas who are Negranta, beyond the ego, they are attracted to the extraordinary qualities of Sri Hari. So last week, he was starting to give his first 7 meanings. We started to look at that particular passage. Oops, what did we leave off here? Yeah, I think we're on verse 121. So we heard first 3 meanings of the Atmarama verse. And the word Atmarama can refer to those on the path of Gyan Marg. And so the people on the path of Gyan Marg, they are said to be of 2 types. Those who are considered as Brahma Upasaka, worshippers of Brahman. And the others are called as Moksha Kankshi, those who are desiring liberation. So it's not clear what is the distinction between these 2, because it's not told by Mahaprabhu. And Prabhupada doesn't elaborate on it either. A little maybe intuitive sense is that it is assumed that if you are a worshiper of Brahman, then you must also be interested in the goal of liberation. It may be possible that those who are considered Brahma Upasakas, they are people who have high levels of Sattva-guna. So they are immersed in the realization of the self, Swarupananda, and such persons are called as Brahma Upasakas. Then the other category, Moksha Kankshi, they have a deliberate, goal of getting out of the material energy and merging into Brahman. There are no, PowerPoint doesn't make any comment about it, and I'm not having any access to like pre-modern commentaries on the Chaitanya Charitamrita. So the distinction not super clear. So anyway, of these worshippers of Brahman, there are 3 types were mentioned: Sadhaka, and then Brahmamai, and Pratibrahmalai. And Sadhaka, the difference between the Sadhaka and the other 2 categories seems clear enough. But the Brahmamai and Pratibrahmalai, they seem also very similar. And there's no explanation of the subtle distinctions between these 2. Maybe historically, people in the Gyan Marg were broken down in so many different ways. But basically, a sadhaka is one whose practice is to become immersed in the Brahman realization, or Swarupananda. And the Brahmamaya is a person who's already having attained such absorption, such as the four Kumaras and Shukadeva Goswami. They were the ones that were given as examples. Also Navayogendras. Prata Brahmalai means one who is already attained Brahman. So that is also not clear what that means. Prabhupada in the translation used the word merge, but it's a little bit, how you say, it's a little bit misleading maybe, because this verse is talking about people who become attracted to the qualities of Hari. So if you are already in the Brahma Jyoti, that's not going to happen. So that is why the attainment of Brahma Jyoti is considered worse than hell for bhaktas, Shuddha bhaktas particularly. So these people are all in the material world having high levels of realization. But what is the distinction between Brahmamaya, Prapta Brahmalaya? It's not clear to me. But in any case, these are the three types that Mahaprabhu identifies, who are Brahma Upasakas. And by the nature of Bhakti Swabha, by Sadhu Sangha, or by Krishna Kripa, these three types of persons, they become attracted to the qualities of Hari. So these first three types Mahaprabhu mentioned. Then he wants to describe the other category, which he calls as moksha kankshi, those who are desiring liberation to the Brahma Jyoti, Sayuja Mukti. I'm assuming that is the meaning here, Sayuja Mukti. So he's going to break them down now. So that's where we left off. So he first goes on to say this thing. So those who wish to merge into the impersonal Brahman are also divided into three categories: moksha, kankshi, gyani hai, tina prakara. So what are the three types? Mamukshu, jiva mukta, prapta swarupa are. So one is called as the mamukshu. He is desiring liberation into, or desiring the sayuja mukti. Jiva mukta, he is already liberated while in the body. And the other is called prapta swarupa, one who is self-realized, or prapta means like attainment of his swarup. So also self-realized. What is the distinction there? Also, again, not very clear. Or this is the subtle distinctions between like similar types of, like one type of person can be described in different ways. But here is broken 3 ways to show nuance. It's not clear because the word prapta swarup means you've attained your swarupa. And we'll see the verse Mahaprabhu quotes from second canto Srimad Bhagavatam. To attain the swarup means after giving up identity with the subtle and gross bodies, and one is situated in his own self as a jiva, or situated in his identity as a spiritual form. So both can be there. But here, prapta swarup means situated in the identity of the jiva as different from matter. So what are these subtle distinctions? Yeah, I'm getting a sense that it's like one could be one person with subtle distinctions, or 3 types. So anyway, those desiring to be liberated, those already liberated, and those who have realized Brahman. So describing each a little bit here. There are many people within this material world who desire liberation. Mamukshu jagate aneka samsari jana. So samsari jana. There are people who are suffering the samsara and they desire liberation. And for this purpose, they also render devotional service to Lord Krishna. Mukti lagi bhakte kare Krishna bhajan. So he quotes this verse from second chapter of the first canto. Mamukshavo guru rupam hitva bhuta patennata narayana kalashanta bhajanti hanasuyava. Those who want to be relieved from the material clutches give up the worship of the various demigods who have fearful bodies. Such peaceful devotees who are not envious of the demigods worship the different forms of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana. And the context where this verse appears, Sutta Goswami is describing, he's answering the questions of the sages in Naimisharanya. They ask 6 questions specifically about Krishna. And the first 2 questions are, what is the highest attainment for the living entity? and what does it mean to that attainment. So he's giving the answer that the highest attainment is prema, and the means to that attainment is sadhana bhakti. That is the paradharma. And then after describing some of the characteristics of this bhakti, he describes how this bhakti develops from sadhana to sadhya. And then after that, he says that many, after that, he says that many sadhus, they all do this bhakti yoga and they enjoy great bliss. Then he goes on to say that this bhakti is for Bhagavan. It's not for other forms of the, it's for Bhagavan. It's not for other entities like the devatas specifically, zooming in on that. And then in that context, this verse is coming. Mamukshara Guru Rupam Hitva Bhutam Patenata. So even those who are desiring liberation, because he's trying to make a case that you should do bhakti unto Bhagavan, and not that you should do some other, some other sadhana towards some other entity like a devata. So mumukshava, even those who desire liberation, that doesn't mean mumukshava, even those who desire liberation, they give up the ghastly forms of the devatas. Mumukshava guru rupam hitva bhuta patenata. Even those who desire liberation give up the ghastly forms of the devatas. Narayana kalashanta. And they worship the forms of Narayana. Narayana Kala means Narayana, or the Kala, the expansion forms of Lord Narayana, which are Shanta, which are very peaceful. He's making a contrast between the Guru Rupam, the forms of the Devatas, which are ghastly. Of course, the ghastly ones are like more the tamasic forms, like Vajrakali and some other more ferocious forms of the Devatas. But even the less ferocious forms are considered ghastly in the sense that they're prakriti, and worship of them leads to material bondage. So in that sense, also ghastly. But Narayana Kala, the Narayana, his expansions, they are Shanta, they're not ghastly, they're peaceful. Bhajanti Yanasuyava. So they worship those forms without being envious of the other ones. So the basic idea where this verse appears is that everyone should worship Narayana Kala. And even the liberated people desiring liberation, they should also worship. So Mahaprabhu is quoting that verse to describe this first type of moksha kankshi, a person who is mumukshu, kind of like a beginner. He wants to get the Sayuja Mukti. Okay, then he also should worship the Supreme Lord. So that's why he's quoting this verse as a pramana. If those who are attracted to demigod worship fortunately associate with the devotees, their most devotional service and appreciation of the Lord's qualities gradually awakens. So say Sabhara, those who worship the Devatas, if they get Sadhu Sangha, then they awaken an appreciation for the transcendence, the qualities of Krishna. And in this way, they engage in Krishna's devotional service and give up the desire for liberation and the desire to merge into the existence of impersonal Brahman. I don't know what is the difference between those two. Krishna Bhajana Karai, they engage in Krishna's bhajan, and Mamuksha Chadai, they give up that desire for liberation. There, I guess you'll see this in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9. So in chapter 9, verse 15, Krishna speaks. In chapter 9, it's called the Raja Vidya Yoga, and he wants to speak about bhakti in that chapter. So in the first part of the chapter, he speaks about the conception of the Godhead. Then starting, from his perspective, the conception of the Godhead from the perspective of Krishna. Then after that, the rest of the chapter is basically, he speaks about how others see the Godhead. And according to how they see the Godhead, they make a specific approach, a specific type of surrender. Jaya tamam prapadyante, right? Tamsa type of bhajamiyaham. In accordance with their conception, yata means in accordance with the nature of their approach, but the nature of your approach is going to be according to the sort of concept that you have or have been instructed in. So according to that, you'll make a surrender So then Krishna speaks about that, how different people have different ideas of the Godhead, and they approach that reality in different ways, and they get different results. He first mentions the atheists; they think he's fake, not knowing his position, so they get lost in hypocrisy, assuming the natures of demons and bloodsuckers, rakshasas. And then he mentions the devotees; they have proper conception, so they become mahatmas. They're under the divine hypocrisy, and then they're constantly doing kirtan and endeavoring for sadhu sangha and offering obeisances to the deity and so on. That is their worship. And then in 9:15, he mentions three types. They have understanding of God as basically as Brahman. And they see him, they worship themselves as non-different from that reality, or they worship the devatas as non-different from that reality, or they worship the universe, universal form, aspects of the universe as non-different from that reality. And the idea is that they are interested in moksha. So there's 9:15 Bhagavad Gita. He mentions these three types. I think he says they worship me by the Jnana Yagya. In 9:15, he said there are three other types. They worship me by the Jnana Yagya. So they see Brahman as manifesting as themselves, or as in the form of the devatas or in the universe, and they worship those things in that way to get Sayuja Mukti. So in this context, the Se Sabera, because he's talking about the Mumukshu people, right? So in that context, some of them are worshiping devatas, but they're worshiping devatas as non-different from Brahman, so that they can get Sayuja Mukti. Right. Then after this, in chapter 9 Bhagavad Gita, if you take it, the verses after that, 9:20 through 23, then he talks about people who worship the devatas, but they worship the devatas as devatas, not as manifestations of absolute reality. And so they get even a different result. They, stay in they cycle in the material world. So that's chapter 9. So se sabhera sadhu sangha gunaspurai. So those who worship the devatas as manifestations of Brahman, if they get sadhu sangha, then they come to appreciate Krishna's qualities, and then they also take to Krishna bhajan and give up their desire for liberation. That's what the verse is saying. There's another verse in the second canto. It must come in chapter, it must come in chapter 3, actually. Second canto, chapter 3, maybe verse 11, actually. The verse after Akama Sarva Kamava, a verse after that. I could look it up later. But in that verse is describing that what is the value of this devata worship? Because in Vedic culture, so many materialists are there and they're worshiping the devatas. And now we're hearing that these people who are after Sayuja Mukti, they also worship the devatas. So that verse, as I recall, I have to look it up to see if I'm recalling it properly. I think that I am, though. That these people the value of this devata worship in Vedic culture, or you could say Vedic culture in general, is that the sadhus are roaming around. They also honor these deities, because the previous verse Mahaprabhu quoted says that although they Narayana Kalashanta Bhajantihi Anasuyava, although they worship the peaceful forms of Narayana, they are without envy. So they also understand the devatas to be servants of the Supreme Lord, and therefore they are also honored. Just like sometimes if you go on yatra to these famous places in India, in some places they're like demigod worshiping places. And we would be taken to those places and we would offer obeisances to those deities also. And the devotees without anasuyava, they don't have any envy. So sometimes you go to a lot of temples in the West, Hindu temples, that is to say. Even in Vaishnav Hindu temples, you'll see that they put a lot of devatas in the temples because people are attached to those various devatas, and therefore they play. I don't know how to say it so it doesn't sound like material, but install various devatas in their temples, because that also brings the money, because these Hindus are coming from these different deities. Prabhupada didn't want that in his temples because he didn't want them to be deviated from the concept of Krishna as the supreme Godhead, knowing that Hindus generally believe that all the forms are one and not different. You can worship whichever one you want. So Prabhupada didn't want that confusion. There's many stories about this. Not many, but there are a few at least. So we don't have in our temples, but that doesn't mean we have a bad feeling about the Devatas, or even in one sense, the Devata worshippers. I know we encounter shlokas like, it will be better to be burned alive in a house than to go to a temple of Devata worshippers. That is, I think that verse is composed by Sri Ramanujacharya. Maybe I'm wrong there. And he's there. That verse is quoted in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, also in the context of being bewaring. I don't think that's a word, but bewaring of asat sangha. It changes you. It changes your aim in life, and the aim in life is one of the most important things, because that's the organizing principle for the otherwise life, which would be just like chaos. Aim gives it order. So don't do a satsanga, because if you do a satsanga, your aim will get changed and you become deviated from Shuddha Bhakti. So the acharyas are quoting verses like this a little bit heavy. But still, the devotees are anasuya, but they don't have any envy. So they also will honor. You'll go and offer obeisances. Oh, this is also devotee of the Lord. He will be honored. So as these sadhus are wandering around like that, then you get a chance to bump into them on occasion. They have some attractive features. You see them. Then you come to get their sangha by Jaya, somehow or other, by chance, you come to get their sangha. Then getting their sangha, you get attracted maybe to them. They're speaking something, or they're performing the kirtan, and you get attracted to their kirtan, and their bhava. And then you also worship Krishna and say, what is this moksha? Why I go for Sayudra Mukti when I can get ecstasy, become ecstatic? So the Mahaprabhu is saying here, they give up Muksha Chadai. Maybe he has some pramana for this also. Yeah. This is from Hari Bhakti Sudhodhaya. Oho Mahatma Bahudosha Dushto. Pyakena Bhatyesha Bhavagunena. Satsangamakyena Sukavahena. Kritadhya Noyena Krishama Muksha. Oh, great learned devotee, although there are many faults in this material world. Bahudosha Dushta. There are many faults in this material world. There's one good opportunity. Bahudosha dushto api. So although there are many faults in this material world, ekena, there's one thing that shines through this. Esha bhava, one good quality that shines through in this material world. And what is that? Satsangamakyena, the association of devotees. Such association brings about great happiness, sukhavahena. Due to this good quality, our strong desire to achieve liberation by merging into the Brahman effulgence has become weakened. Yeah, kritadya noyena krishna muksha. So the muksha, the desire for liberation, has become krishna, insignificant. Because although previously it was very strong, it has now been made insignificant because of the happiness I got from sadhu sangha. So this is a pramana verse, very nice. I like this verse. I should learn this verse. Ekena bhatyesha bhavogunena. There is one quality that shines through in this world, which is bahudosha dushto api, although filled with so many faults. Even this quality doesn't shine through in the Brahma Jyoti. Brahma Jyoti is too bright, everything bright. Consciousness is not shining through. But this is shining through very clearly, because even like Sri Vishwanath gives commentary, 10th Canto, chapter 14, he says the Leelas of the Lord shine more brightly in the material world because of the black backdrop of material existence. Just like the sun shines brightly here because there's darkness everywhere. But if the sun is existing in an inherently effulgent environment, it doesn't seem very distinct. But here in the darkness, it shines through very clearly. So the contrast of the brightness of sadhu sangha against the black backdrop of our suffering condition in the material world shines through. If you get that true sadhu sangha, you become happy. Then the other desires become insignificant. This is a very nice verse, sweet verse. Okay, I guess some examples are given. So some pramana was given, now some examples given. Naradhara Sangesh Shonakadi Munigan. By associating with great saints, with the great saint Narada, Shonaka, and other great sages gave up desire for liberation, Mumuksha Chadhiya, and engaged in Krishna's devotional service, Kaila Krishna Bhajan. So Shonaka is given as an example of such a person here. Krishna Darshan, simply by meeting Krishna or receiving Krishna's special favor. Krishna Darshane, Karo Krishna Kripai. So by Krishna Darshan or Krishna's mercy, one can give up the desire for liberation. Mamuksha Chadhiya, being attracted by the transcendental qualities of Krishna when engages in his service. Mune Bhaje Tanarapai. So he keeps explaining this because he's basically wanting to say, I don't know yet because I have to read ahead and study ahead. But basically he's saying, by the quality of bhakti, by the quality of sadhu sangha, or by Krishna's kripa, in these three different ways, people get attracted to different Atmaramas, get attracted to the qualities of Krishna. So I guess that's going to be like a constant refrain in all these explanations. By the nature of bhakti, the mercy of Krishna, and or sadhu sangha, one becomes attracted to the nature of Krishna and renders him service. So he's saying that here too. I don't know if he gives an example of someone who got Krishna darshan. Let's see here. This is a verse from BRS. In this Dwarka Dham, I am being attracted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, who is personified spiritual bliss. Simply by seeing him, I am feeling great happiness. Oh, I have wasted so much time trying to become self-realized through impersonal cultivation. This is a cause for lamentation. I don't know the context of this particular verse where I should have looked it up, but I didn't. But here it's clear someone was after Soyuja Mukti. He paid a visit to Dwarka during Krishna's manifest Leela. And he got darshan of Krishna. And he gave up that desire, being attracted to Krishna's qualities. So that's the point there. Okay, so that's the Mamuksha category described. Then he said there are Jiva Muktas also. So the Jiva Mukta, Aneka, there are many of them, but say Dhubhere Jani, but there are generally two categories, broadly speaking. There are many people who are liberated even in this lifetime. Wow, many. Some are liberated by discharging devotional service, and others are liberated through the philosophical speculative process. So he says, say Dui Bheda Jani. There are two broad categories. Bhakti Jiva Mukta, one who is Jiva Mukta through Bhakti, and one who is Jiva Mukta through Gyan. Okay. So those who are liberated by devotional service, so the Bhakti Jiva Mukta, become more and more attracted by the transcendental qualities of Krishna. So they're already attracted and they become more and more attracted. Guna Akrishnahan. And they do his bhajan. Thus they engage in his service, Krishna bhajan. Those who are liberated by the speculative process eventually fall down again due to offensive activity. So Shuksha Gyan, Jiva Mukta. Those who do Gyan and become Jiva Mukta. Aparade Adomaje, they do aparad. And by the aparad, they are falling down. So this famous verse is quoted. Ye anye aravindakshavi mukta maninas tvai asta bhava ravi shuddha budaya. Aruhya krishna parampadam tatapadantya anandirta yushmanangraya. That's famous verse. We've heard it many times. So O Lotus Eye one, aravindaksha. Those who think they are liberated, vimukta maninas. They think they are liberated because they are jiva muktas. So I can understand why they think that. But who are without devotional service, tvai asta bhava, they have no bhava for Krishna. They are impure intelligence, avishuddha bhudaya. So they have no bhava, achuta bhava varjita. They are devoid of feeling for the Lord. So as we hear by our acharyas, even they come to the platform of Jiva Mukta, there must have been some element of bhakti there, but they're not called, although there's some element of bhakti there, the process is still called as Gyan, because bhakti is only used as a, how you say, subordinate sort of supplement to support. So things are categorized according to their predominance. So because Gyan is predominating and bhakti is just some supporting principle, it's still called as Gyan marg or Shuksha Gyan here. So they come to that position of Jiva Mukta actually by bhakti. That's what we say. It's the bhakti element that brought them to that position of Jiva Mukta. But they think it is their Gyan. So all the bhakti elements, like they may have been doing some japa or some deity worship, they give it up. Now I have attained Jiva Mukta status, so they give it up. So they're called as avishuddha buddhaya. They have impure intelligence. So aruya, that's considered also as aparat, because they give up the bhakti part because they say bhakti is material, or they may think bhakti is material. So they give it up. All right, now I got the support I needed. So aruya krachena parampadam tata. So although they worked very hard to get to that status, the parampadam tata, that's the status of Jiva Mukta, patantyada, they fall down because of aparad. That's the context here. Anadarta yushmanangraya, and they're not respecting your lotus feet. Although they accept severe austerities and penances and rise to the spiritual position, to impersonal Brahman realization, they fall down again because they neglect to worship your lotus feet. Yep. So this verse is coming. Brahma bhuta prasanatma na shochati na kankshati samo sarveshu bhuteshum ma bhaktam labate param. So one who is Brahma bhuta, self-realized, prasanatma, situated at once, realizes the supreme Brahman and becomes fully joyful. Now shochati na kankshati, he never laments for things lost or desires things in the future, right? To have anything. He is equally disposed to every living entity, sama sarveshu bhuteshu. So in that state, he attains pure devotional service unto me. Ma bhaktam labate param. I don't know how this particular verse is being used here. Honestly, I thought about it for a little bit, but I don't know how Mahaprabhu is using this verse here, because he's making the point that the Gyanis, they do aparad. The Gyanis who do aparad, not that they're by nature going to do aparad, but the Gyanis who do aparad, then they fall down because they don't respect bhakti. And then he quotes this verse. I don't know if this is a contrast to that Gyani, but another Gyani, he is there. And when he becomes Jiva Mukta, because he becomes Jiva Mukta by the bhakti part, so then he attains supreme bhakti, ma bhaktam labate param. He attains the transcendence by that bhakti. So I'm not exactly sure how he's using this verse here as a pramana. Maybe only to indicate that it is by that bhakti that he is attaining that Jiva Mukta status. Nice purport here from Sri Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur to this verse. It's kind of long, so I'm just recalling that one statement is there where he says, if you have like I forget the exact analogy he gives, but something to the effect that if you have like a gold nugget and like doll, I think you get something like that. So you cannot tell the difference between like a golden colored nugget, like a gold piece or something, and the doll. But then if you burn it, if you burn that whole batch, so all the doll burns to, nothing, and then the gold piece shines through as supreme. I kind of butchered that comparison, but I'm sure it's there. You can go and see 1854. Maybe we look at it afterwards. So in the same way, the doll is compared to Gyan. There's dry Gyan process, and bhakti is compared to that gold nugget. So at some point, you have to give up the vidya and avidya, and then you attain Jivamukta status. So I'm just trying to understand how this verse is fitting there, that the bhakti will shine supreme. So you come to the Jivamukta status by the bhakti. That's the only thing I can make out. Otherwise, I don't know how he's using this verse here in this context. Now the verse is quoted. Although I was worshipped by those in the path of monism and initiated into self-realization through the yoga system, I have nonetheless been forcibly turned into a maidservant by some cunning boy who is always joking with the gopis. So this verse is, I guess, indicating that the Jiva Mukta, who doesn't commit aparad, he is getting attracted to the qualities of Krishna. That might have been the sense of that Gita verse also. If you don't commit aparad, then by the nature of bhakti, you also become attracted to Krishna's qualities. That's going to be my intuition there, how that verse is being used. So that's the Jiva Mukta person. So these Jiva Muktas, there are two types. The Gani Jiva Mukta also sins of two types, those who commit aparad and those who don't commit aparad. So those who commit aparad, they fall down. That means they become materialistic again. And those who don't commit aparad, then they get attracted to the qualities of Krishna by the nature of bhakti. So last category here, and we'll finish off. So Bhakta Bhale Prapta Swarupa Divya Deha Pai. So one who has attained his constitutional position by the strength of devotional service. So Bhakta Bhale, by the strength of bhakti, he is Prapta Swarup. He's attained his Swarupa. So this person is still in the material world, as far as I'm understanding the context here. So this word Prapta Swarupa can mean you understand yourself as Jiva, or it can mean you understand your Swarup, like your spiritual Swarup. Because it said Divya Deha Pai. By the strength of devotional service, attains a transcendental body even in this lifetime. I think we use this term Swarupa Siddhi in our bhakti circles. Swarup Siddhi is a term that is also used to refer to Bhav Bhakti. So Bhav Bhakti means a type of rati, right? Bhav Bhakti means a type of rati in terms of servitude or friendship or parental love or amorous love. These are the different types of ratis. Also Shanta Bhakti is there. So these ratis, love is love. When we say the word love, it's very abstract in our mind. But this love has a form also, right? So the love of friendship takes on a form, the form of, for example, the Gopas in Vrindavan. Their love is not different from their forms also. That's why in the verse describing Sarana Bhakti, it said, Nitya Siddhasya Bhavasya Prakatyam Hridi Sadyata. And Srila Rupa Goswami is trying to describe how bhava is not created, but is simply manifesting in the heart of a sadhaka who is qualified himself. So he says this bhava is nitya siddhasya, it is eternal and perfect. And Kaviraj Goswami has his disciple, Mukunda Goswami. He's giving commentary there that this nitya siddhasya means the nitya siddhas of the spiritual world. So they have forms and they have a certain type of rati. So they're non-different. In the material world, the form of things and the substance of things are different. So we always make categorization like that. Form and substance. We have the form of our practice, but what is the substance? We'll make some nice philosophical class like that and dishearten the devotees that you're going through the rituals, but what is the substance inside? And we all know our substance is not very good, so we've become discouraged. So that distinction is there in the material world, but that distinction is not there in the spiritual world. The substance has a form. The form has a substance. They're non-different there. So here, Prapta Swarup, if you attain your Swarup, that means Swarup Siddhi, it means Rati. And that Rati has a form, Divya Deha Pai. So it says, even by the strength of Bhakti, you attain Prapta Swarup. And you attain a transcendental body even in this lifetime. Being attracted by Lord Krishna's transcendental qualities, he fully engages in service at his lotus feet naturally. So you have that Swarup. Guna, Krishna Guna Akrishna Han Bhaje Krishna Pai. So naturally you're attracted to Krishna's qualities. You do his bhajan. So that is one meaning of Prapta Swarup. Although here, I don't know why Mahaprabhu is giving this meaning, Prapta Swarup. Let's see if another one is there. Yeah, he quotes this verse. This verse is coming when Shukadeva Goswami is describing the 10 topics of Srimad Bhagavatam, and one of the topics is mukti. So then when defining mukti, he says, muktir hitvanyata rupam sarupena vyavastiti. Liberation means being situated in one's eternal original form after giving up the changeable gross and subtle bodies. So anyata rupam means the gross and subtle bodies, the other forms. So you give up the other forms, sarupena vyavastiti, and you become fixed in your swarupa. So Acharyas, I looked at the commentaries of this verse. Acharya said, being fixed in your swarupa means as jiva or as a eternal associate in the spiritual world after you awaken the reti and all that. So Maharu's given this second explanation. I don't know how that fits here because he's describing the three types of people who desire liberation, moksha kankshi. So this prapta swarupa is the third type. But anyway, let us see. Krishna by her mukha dhoshe maya haite bhai. By opposing Krishna consciousness, so Krishna by her mukha dhoshe, by the fault of being Krishna by her mukha, one becomes conditioned and fearful due to the influence of Maya. Maya haite bhai. By executing devotional service faithfully, however, Krishna umukta bhakti haite, from doing that, then Maya mukta hai, you become free from Maya. And then the obvious verse he quotes here, Bhayandutiya Benivesha Tashat, Ishada Petasha Viparyayo Ashmita. You've heard me describe this verse many times over. But due to being Ishada Petasha means Krishna by her mukha, turned away from the light, turned away from the sun. So you're seeing the shadow, right? Turned away from the Godhead. When that happens, then you have Ashmiti. Ashmiti means forgetfulness of your Swarupa. That's how all the acharyas talk about this word Ashmiti. So the context Maharaj was bringing this up in is Prapta Swarup. You have attained your Swarup, or you're fixed in your Swarup. So when you're turned away from the Godhead, then you become Ashmiti. You're forgetful of your Swarup. And the result of that forgetfulness is identification with the gross and subtle bodies. That is called viparya here, which means just the opposite. In this context, just the opposite of who you are. And dvitiya beniveshatasya, you become absorbed in nonsense, dvitiya. And what is nonsense? Basically anything we like. Informed by our different body and mind, some nonsense is there. Dvitiya means a second thing. That refers to Maya. We are thinking that there's a second thing outside of God. This is called separateness feeling, pratak bhava. So we feel ourselves to be separate, looking out at a separate world, and thus we get the separate desires. So this is called dvitiya beniveshata. We get absorbed in that. And the result of that is bhayam, fear, shoka, lamentation, moha, bewilderment. Okay, so tamaya yato, this is all Maya. So this is what he's just described. Tamaya yato, I mean, that's Maya. So if you are an intelligent person, you want to come out of this Maya, then bhakti ekayesham, bhakti ekaya isham. You should do bhakti to Krishna, Guru Deva Tatma, understanding Guru Dev, Guru to be oneself and one's Atma. One's very self and one's like worshipful deity, Deva, Guru Deva Tatma. So the context of this verse is that you attain Prapta Swarup by bhakti. And when you don't do bhakti, you're Krishna Bharmukha, then you are forgetful of that Swarup. So Mahaprabhu's talked about Prapta Swarup in terms of like a spiritual identity. But again, it could also refer to those who are after that jiva identity. Both are told in the commentaries of our acharyas. Mukti hitva nyatarupam swarupena vyavastiti. But in any case, to get Prapta Swarupa of any type, you have to do Bhakti Yoga. That's why this verse is being quoted. And if you do Bhakti Yoga, then you become attracted to the qualities of Krishna. Another verse talking about getting out of the gunas of Maya, famous verse. This divine energy of mind consisting of the three modes of material nature is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. And concluding ideas here. One does not attain liberation without rendering devotional service. Liberation is attained only by devotional service. Okay, we're going to pause there. So anyway, same ideas happening. These three types of people who desire Sayuja Mukti, but if by Bhakti or Sadhu Sangha or Krishna's darshan, his mercy, they also get attracted to Krishna's qualities. Okay, so some questions there. Athena has some question.
Hare Krishna, JJP, Dandavat Pranams. I'm on my laptop. Are you able to hear me properly? I know we had issues before.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Before I launch, I have two questions. Before I launch into my two questions, it is your birthday, so I don't know if others want to sing happy birthday to Jaya
Please don't
Jagannath.
sing happy birthday. If you'd like to wish me happy birthday, you can just say in the chat box or something like that.
Okay, happy birthday, JJP. I won't sing it, but okay, I had two questions. The first one is, you had mentioned there are two types of Jiva Muktas. We know that one, a Jiva Mukta through Gyan, and then another through devotional service.
Yes.
And the ones through who reach Gyan, they're the ones who fall down because of aparad, and the ones who don't perform aparad, then they're attracted to devotional service. But if that's the case, or attracted to Krishna. So once they are Jiva Mukti means you're still in this material body. So if you still in this material body and then you don't perform any aparad and you're attracted to Krishna, then you therefore will reach. You'll be interested in personal liberation in Vaikuntha. If that is the case, then who are the ones that ever reach? I mean, this goes to Agape's previous question. Is it just like the demons being liberated by Krishna that go into the Brahmajyoti because you either fall down or through Gyan, you're liberated, but you're attracted to Krishna because you don't perform aparad. And if you're attracted to Krishna, then you'll want to go to Vaikuntha. So then who actually even reaches Brahmajyoti?
Somebody reaches. There are people who are interested in that, right? So someone gets it. These people can become Shanta Bhaktas. So I'm not 100% sure about Shanta Bhaktas, but maybe some of them are still going to Brahman. But someone is reaching the Brahmajyoti. Here, I don't know. I'm also not sure if the attraction to Krishna qualities or to Krishna bhajan precludes their what do I want to say? Precludes their giving up like desires for like Sayuja Mukti. Of course, it says here sometimes they give them up, but some people don't also. But they also do Krishna bhajan to get that to get that goal. So someone is doing it. Who is doing it? I don't know, but someone is going. There are plenty of people who are interested in that.
Thank you. My second question was, and I'm not sure if this was talking just specifically of those interested, in devotion and attracted to Krishna, but you had mentioned that when you realize your Swarup, there's rati. But earlier in the session, you had mentioned that you realize your Swarup also when you go into the Brahmajyoti, because that is your original position or form. So how is there any rati when you're in that position?
No, so the word Swarup used differently. So word Swarup can refer to the identity as jiva. You realize the inherent jivahood, so to speak. And the word Swarup was also being used to refer to a spiritual identity, like a spiritual body. Swarup Siddhi. We were qualifying it that way. So there's a little distinction there.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
It says if you perform devotional service faithfully in 24:136, what does faithfully signify here? Oh, the word is Krishna Umukha, as being contrast with the fault of Krishna Bahirmukha. So Bahirmukha means turned away from God, oblivious of Krishna. And Krishna Umukha means turning toward God, facing him. So faithfully, that part is added, but faithfully, as we heard from Mahaprabhu's teachings earlier to Sanatana Goswami, means the firm conviction that simply by bhakti, then one can get everything, whether it's bhukti or mukti or siddhi, and of course bhakti. So that's how faith is generally defined. That's how Maru has defined faith. So I maybe suspect it means the same here. But here it says Krishna Umukha means you're facing. So basically, our spirituality is, if you had to speak it to like a secular audience and you're trying to make a case for what is our spirituality. So our basic idea is that reality, there is a higher reality. And there's basically two directions you can face in relationship to that reality, toward it or away from it. So when you are facing away from that higher reality, then you're called as a materialist, basically. And when you're trying to face toward that reality, you're called as a spiritualist. So all the spiritual sadhanas that are there, yoga sadhana, gyan sadhana, whatever, and bhakti sadhana, there are different degrees of facing toward that higher reality. Right now, according to the completion of the reality you're trying to discover, then that's the strength of the process that you're taking, or the completion of the process that you're accepting. So, but in all cases, the purpose is the same, to face toward that reality, that higher reality. Now, we, of course, as we say, that higher reality and its completion is Krishna. So we call facing that reality Krishna Umukha. Facing toward that reality, we say, is Krishna Umukha. And therefore, the problem is facing away from that reality, Krishna Bahirmukha. But if people don't know that reality, higher reality is Krishna, then you can say higher power, or you could tell people, what is your highest ideal in life? So when you face toward that ideal and you move toward it, you can call that a faithful movement, a faithful facing. And when you're moving away from it, then not faithful, or, the fault of facing away from your highest truth. So that faithful is like that. You facing it and you're moving toward it. So not sure, but our memory tells that Jaya's birthday, Prabhu, not to embarrass you, but we both pray for your long, healthy life of devotion to the Lord. And also thank you on this day and forever for helping us maintain our little devotion to Krishna. We owe you so much. Thank you very much. Happy birthday, Jay. Thank you very much. Wow, happy birthday. Thank you very much. So grateful you were born. Thank you for dedicating so much time and energy towards learning and sharing about bhakti as taught by our acharyas. Your teachings have brought in my mind, and I'm forever grateful, Jai. And thanks for all the laughs too, Jai. Okay. Thank you so much for serving us on your special day, and always so incredibly grateful to learn from you. I really don't know where I would be on my Krishna conscious journey without you. Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge and wisdom, and for all your selfless service to us fallen souls. Thank you so much for being you, Haribo. Thank you. Happy birthday, old man. Mukunda gets my mood. My attitude. Jai, thank you all very much for the sweet, encouraging words. I really do appreciate it, even though it doesn't sound like that I do. I'm always a little bit like this on my birthday because it's a lot. I already got so many messages this morning from people, and like the Europe, so they're like 6 hours ahead. So they're waking up to like so many messages. I got to read through them. You have to respond to them, and so I am very grateful. Trust me, I'm deeply grateful. Now the phone calls are coming. Okay, the old is gold, old is wise. Not always. Also praying, if at all your heart brings you back to Chicago for good. No, that's not gonna happen. Jai, the force awaits you. I like to believe that. I'll hold on to that, even though I don't know how true it is. Okay, then shall we close out for today? Thank you all very much for the well wishing. I really do appreciate it. And may we all be blessed to carry on evolving our, mystical, direct perception of Krishna and the ecstasy that comes with that. Jai Ho. So Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Go Premanandi. Hari Bo.
Hare Bol, Hare Krishna. Thank you so much. Have a great birthday.